So, how do you feel that the work you do within the sorority contributes to feminism?
Well, Delta was one of the first African American groups to even attempt it. We, even though we were forced to the back of the line, we were in the suffragette movement.
Mhm.
Uh, in other words, demonstrating an independence
Right.
for women. We in 1913 were marching as suffragettes in the back of the line where they were throwing eggs at us and tomatoes and rotten food because we were black, you know. But that independence and that desire to make a difference for women, I think, is how it ties into the feminist movement.
Mm-hmm.
They're very bright, they're in every profession, and they will take on political stuff in a minute, even though we are not partisan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you want to discuss some of like the hardships you've had to overcome being a woman and being an African American woman through the years?
Yeah. Being a woman, I think I may have had, and being an African American
Mhm.
woman, it was double whammy.
Right.
First of all, you're a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Your views aren't supposed to be considered. You
Yeah.
know, who told you to think? We make the rules. You stay home and leave it to Beaver.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's her name? She walked around in high heel shoes with an apron on, and this kind of stuff. Well, and then being an African American woman, how dare you ask to be in front of the line?
Right.
But with that group participation and cohesiveness,
Mm-hmm.
we're able to address, even though we're nonpartisan between one party or another, we are able to identify what the issues are and fight for change. If you know about women like Loretta Lynch, who was a prosecutor in New York, Southern District of New York, Barbara Jordan, you know, the senator from Texas, those women are all deltas. Some of the most prominent women you will ever meet are deltas.
That's amazing.
And one woman who was, you know, in the forefront of the civil rights movement wasn't an African American woman, and she was a Delta too. She was white, you know.
Yeah.
And she was not only white, but they didn't call it feminism then.
Mm-hmm.
But this woman was holding her own right then.
Right.
Yeah. And so when it comes to feminism, you'll find us in leadership roles, in government, in politics.
Yeah.
The first AME bishop is one of my sorors.
Huh.
You know, she's a Delta, Baltimore, Maryland. She was the granddaughter of one of the founders of Delta. We may not have labeled it feminism,
Right.
but being African American and having to continually fight for what's right now, emphasizing the value of human life, be it black or white, fighting for equal pay for women for doing the same type of work.
Yes.
You will find deltas in the forefront of any of those kinds of issues.
Wow.
We have a Delta Days in the nation's capital
Mm-hmm.
once a year in DC, and we come together as a group and we go, we get on the steps of the Capitol and we all go from coming from all over the country and from out of the country, going to your senator's or your representative's office, presenting him what issues you think are important, not only to African Americans, but to women and to people as a whole. That's what deltas
Yeah.
do.
That's
You know, we have a
incredible.
5-point program.
Right.
One of the programmatic thrusts is political awareness and involvement. Feminism is woven all through it.
That's incredible. So, why do you personally feel that is important to empower women and do the work that you do?
Because we are more than half of the nation's population. Without the women, we don't have a country.
Right.
Without the women, raising the next generation, or working and raising the next generation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And teaching our children what's important
Right.
and steering them in the right direction, what will happen to the country? Right now, we're trying to educate more women
Mm-hmm.
to vote and get, even though we are nonpartisan,
Of course.
we will show up when there is a position that, say, what was her name? I can't think of it now. But right now, Marcia Fudge,
Mm-hmm.
who is working with Nancy Pelosi, who managed to get some things that we wanted as a people. When we have one of those women trying to get confirmed and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
we show up in numbers,
Right.
dressed in red.
Yes.
It makes quite an impression on folks
Oh,
when
I'm
they
sure.
see us coming.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So how has the feminist movement changed since you were a kid?
Well, as a kid, we didn't talk about feminist movement.
Right.
Women stayed home,
Mm-hmm.
watched the kids, did the laundry, and whatever the husband said was the law of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my daughter is a lawyer.
That's
She
awesome.
didn't stay home.
Right.
She travels internationally. She was negotiating a treaty in Russia. For the United States. She was in Austria speaking before the United Nations. Those are roles that women never would have been open to women.
Right.
You know, like when RBG was in school. You know, the movie was about her because of sex. That women didn't do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So those are the differences, even though I'm not as old as RBG.
Right.
But those are some of the changes that you've seen happen over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Like since I was a kid. When I was a kid, you didn't see lawyers,
Right.
women, very many of them. They were a rarity. There'd be one in the class.
Mm-hmm.
And you certainly didn't see African American.
Right.
They were a rarity. If they didn't go to Howard University,
Mm-hmm.
where Delta was founded.
Oh yeah.
But my daughter went to what we call the old boys school, the College of William and Mary,
Oh wow.
one of the oldest
Yeah.
law schools in the country. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but those are the differences since between I was a child, and if you want to put a feminist and relate it to feminism, women didn't do those things
Right.
then. You know, you stayed at home.
Mm-hmm.
You sewed your own clothes. You shut your mouth. Your husband brought home the money. You know, right now we say we not only fry the bacon up in a pan, we'll buy the bacon and cook it too. We're not where I think we are capable or need to be
Right.
as women.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been historically, through the ages, women have always been put in second place.
Yes.
But it's costing our country. We can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us realize that. And so I raised my daughter to hold her own. I always told her that when you marry, it's good to be Mrs. and have your husband. There's nothing wrong with having a husband.
Right.
But I want you to be able to hold your own, whether he's there or not. And some people call it feminism. I just call it being a child of God and capable and competent. And it's nothing wrong with that. And that we have a responsibility for those of us who have managed to move ahead. We have a responsibility to reach back and pull another young woman along.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And we try to pull young men along too, because our
Right.
daughters need husbands too. Because there's nothing wrong with having a husband, even though you might put him out
Of
one
course.
day. You need to have the option, Maggie.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with having a husband. It's a good thing,
Right.
marriage and family.
Mm-hmm.
But you shouldn't be ever solely dependent upon another person.
Right.
You have a brain too.
Yeah.
Use it.
Of course.
Yeah.
So was there ever a point where you had beliefs that differ from yours now, like whereas you believed fully that like men were supposed to be dominant, or like where you wouldn't consider yourself a feminist?
I've always been, you know, they say They would relate feminism to burning bras. Bras cost me too much money. $68. I'm not gonna burn one. You know.
Yes.
But I've always been, and we could call it feminism or whatever we want to call it. I've always been fierce to the independent. I've always been a strong advocate for women's capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt it was wrong that certain doors were not open to women. And believe it or not, in 2019, you still have those situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're gonna, it's just like I'm saying this racially.
Yes.
I'm gonna fight till the day I die. But being a black woman, I'm still gonna fight till the day I die. Because I'm female too. Mm-hmm.
Of course.
But I haven't lost my sense of humor.
Definitely not.
And you can't afford to.
Right.
You can't afford to become, so focused on the issue that you're bitter. No. You're taking energy. If you think of energy as being a portion of a pie, why are you going to use a big portion of that in anger and hatred and fight and somebody else is wrong? You have to inch by inch.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of inch by inch, I want to get foot by foot. And you keep trying.
Of course.
You keep trying. And you support other women.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big supporter of other women running for office.
Yes.
I try to be aware of what the issues are. I try to keep an open mind. Just because people don't agree with me doesn't mean that they are completely wrong and I'm completely right. But I like to get it all the way out there and try to, because you don't get anybody over to your point of view that way. But there's some people I want to, anyway. Like that poor thing that was killed in Charlottesville. Hatred.
Mm-hmm.
She's a woman too. Who was it? Sojourner Truth said, and when I think of black women, ain't I a woman too? She said she could cut as much wood and eat as much food as any man could.
Yes.
She was a feminist back then. You just didn't call it that.
Right.
The one, what was her name with the, born on the Eastern Shore, the Underground Railroad?
Mm-hmm.
What's her name? Because of my memory always.
Harriet Tubman?
Harriet Tubman. She was a feminist.
Yeah.
You just didn't call it that. Or people like me who showed up on a college campus without being registered and having no money. A feminist would do that because I thought I was entitled to it, that I was supposed to get an education.
Yeah,
even though I didn't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow. And I've raised my daughter to be that way. It doesn't mean she hates men. No, she loves men.
Yeah.
Me, I love some men. However, I'm still an advocate for women achieving as much as they can. Are we there yet? Does it bother me that my daughter has to fight some of the same battles that I had to fight? But you never quit. Never quit. With my last breath, I'll still be. Because I love this country, and what can't we be if we use all of its resources? We're wasting. Some of the brightest minds I've met are women.